Alright, I'm here with how to animate a fight scene part 2. I can't believe it's been a year since I posted part 1. Uh, but this is but this is how to animate a fight scene part 2, spring theory, and I'll get into that in a moment. Uh, I just want to keep this video as short and concise as possible, and just want to hit the key points. With that being said, let's dive right into it. All right, spring theory. So, not string theory, but spring theory is a term I am coining. So, in a fight scene, the three key principles you want to keep in mind are anticipation, follow through, and overshoot. That's not to say that you should discard the other 12 principles of animation. In fact, what I would recommend you guys do is to write down or type out the 12 principles of animation and just stick that uh, paper on your wall or write it down on a post-it note and stick it on your computer monitor. That way you can use that as reference and as a checklist to make sure you're hitting each and every principle in your animation. But for this video, we're just gonna focus on these three principles as they apply to spring theory, and I will furthermore explain how spring theory applies to a fight scene. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and play this spring animation and explain how these three principles here apply to the spring. Alright, so as you all saw, the spring charges up. That's your anticipation. Then it'll follow through, and then you have your overshoot because there is some extra energy exerted before the spring goes back into place. Now, how does this apply to a fight scene? Well, let's see. I have two characters here, blue and red, and the blue is going to punch red, and I'm going to play this animation. All right. So we can observe uh, the same principles being applied to this punch animation as we observed in the spring. So blue is charging up. This is his anticipation. He's following through. He's punching again. There's some more anticipation. There's his follow through and overshoot right there. And if you guys wanted, you could add more frames to sort of cushion out him resting into place. But for this video, I think this example is fine. So the other thing um, you want to another tool that I'd recommend using is the timing chart. The timing chart is very useful because it will help you plan out your animation. I discussed the timing chart, I believe, in part 1, but as a quick recap, this is a timing chart. This is what animators use to time out their animations. Um, so this is the timing chart for the blue character, as you can see here. I'm running it at 24 FPS, which is the standard in North America. I'm using Adobe Animate, and in the Properties tab, you can go down here and change the frame rate. So you can set this to 12 or 30, whatever you prefer, but I like to set mine at 24 FPS. Um, so the timing chart may seem intimidating at first to some people, but It's really not that difficult once you break it down. So um, it's a timing chart. Think of it as a timeline. So this is just a timeline of action. So the numbers represent the frame number, and the lines themselves also represent the frame, and the spaces represent how much, for how many frames you need to hold um, uh, the action. So for example, from 7 to 9, you hold it for 2 frames. 11 to 15, you hold it for 15 frames. Um, and then the other thing you need to keep in mind is your spacing as well. So that is the timing chart, and uh, I've also made a timing chart for the red character. Sorry, for the red character. As you can see, the red character starts at frame 15 as he's being punched. And then this is your impact frame. I wrote down impact. You don't have to. And impact frames are used a lot in anime, and they're stylized in so many different ways. But for my example, I just used a black background and I made a shockwave. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the next phase. So the next phase is actually your storyboard or your thumbnail. This is actually considered more of a thumbnail than a storyboard. This storyboard here, I got from a website called printablepaper.net, and they have a lot of templates for storyboards that you can download. This is the one I selected, and I picked it because it's got a large frame, and there's also space down here to write down notes. So um, once you download your template, whatever template you prefer, the next step is to actually draw out the poses for your character. So think of your storyboard or your thumbnail sort of as a comic book. And this is just going to be a short scene. So as you can see, I've got the two characters standing. I've got their fists clashing. I zoom out. I have the red character uppercutting. I've got the red character grabbing the blue character's ankle. I have him slamming. Have I'm having the red character slam the blue character to the ground. And then I have him. Then I have the red character toss the blue character into the side of a mountain. And then you see the blue character exploding out of the mountain, charging up for an energy blast, and that's where I ended. It's only 6 pages and it's a very short scene. So the next step is to take your thumbnail or your storyboard and and to create a animatic. An animatic is basically when you draw out your keyframes. All you're doing is just blocking out the scene. So as you can see here, I've got the two characters standing. I have them charging towards each other. I've got their fists clashing, a little bit of an impact there. I have them zoom out, or rather I cut to them zooming out. And then I draw a few frames to indicate the red character uppercutting, the blue character flying up, the red character grabbing the blue character's leg, slams him to the ground, then tosses him towards a mountain, We have a shot of the mountain. Then we have the blue character exploding out of the mountain and charging up for the energy blast, and finally releasing the energy. Um, Excuse that dialogue box, it's just auto recovery. Anyways, so that's pretty much it. I'd highly recommend planning out your fights using a storyboard or just thumbnailing a few poses. Um, so what I'm doing here is called pose to pose animation. Um, but you can also do straight ahead animation, and the benefit of straight ahead animation in a fight scene is you'll get more organic, fluid action. But what but how professionals do it is it's a combination of pose to pose and straight ahead. Um, so that's pretty much it. I may I may do a part three, but part three will just be me doing some of the in-betweens, so it might be a longer video, and I'm not sure when I'll upload that. But if you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below. I will also post a link to part one of how to animate a fight scene. I'll also provide some other links to sorry. I'll also provide links to other resources in the description down below.